Our guest, as I've mentioned, Colin Dobbyne of Big Blue Solutions. He's not only a consultant and system architect, but also a futurist and an innovator. Isn't that right, Colin? Why don't we bring him on in and let's talk to him.
Hello,
and a musician.
Justin.
Did I mention that? Look at that piano. Hi, Colin. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So,
how you been?
Good. Welcome, and thank you for being here. As I've said it a lot already this episode, this isn't my world. And I think that's probably true for a lot of our audience. So why don't you start out with just kind of an overview. What does the modern operating room look like, and what role does AV technology play in it?
Well, I think that there's lots of sort of drama series now, which actually give you a fairly good idea. I don't know how popular they are in the US, but certainly here in the UK, there's one up the road here at Papworth Hospital, where people get a really good view of what goes on inside an operating room. And one of the things that they will undoubtedly see more and more is that there's just a fantastic use of video. Whether it's for endoscopy, which is used for what we call minimal invasive surgery, or more lay term is keyhole surgery. But there's all kind of imaging devices out there. So there could be all kind of scanning machines, C-arms, which is like a live X-ray. You've got ultrasound. I mean, the list goes on. And so you'll see all of these screens and beeps and noises and things and that. And it's a mass of electronic devices. And that's really the modern OR. But to some extent, it really depends if you sort of want to say, where are we now, which is what I class as surgery 3.0, which is with all of this fantastic silicon chip-based appliances and devices and cameras, or where we are really rapidly going, which I think is a really exciting journey. It's been long overdue, to be honest, and that's about it's a drum I constantly bang on is the getting an OR connected. And this is what we would call surgery 4.0, and that's really where the whole world of rapid, fast, cloud-based computing and data exchange and things like that can really enhance the surgical procedure, and of course ultimately patient outcomes. But a good way to get a good look at what is a modern OR, just watch one of those drama series.
That's funny. I wish I'd thought of that.
Maybe not Seinfeld.
Yeah, you're right. I probably plus that was 30 years ago. So when you bring up the TV example, that's a great point. I don't watch medical dramas. They are very popular here. Maybe our audience knows all this because they watch. Shows that I have watched in the past that featured. I mean, I don't think the medical dramas feature AV, but that show it. I'm thinking of my old favorite show, 24, right? And you go in the spy's control room, and they've got this massive computer network, and everybody's got their own screens, and they're sharing video. And I remember looking at that 20 years ago and thinking, like, this is where we need to get to with AV, the ability to actually do that. It's all fake for TV. I'm going somewhere here. I'm curious, as you watch the modern medical dramas, how realistic is their portrayal of audio-video, and how fantastical, we should get there someday, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose when I say watch it, people are kind of absorbed in the patient, the problem with the patient, and what the surgeon is doing. And actually, nobody really looks too hard at what kind of screen it is or what kind of camera it is. I know many surgeons that couldn't tell you the manufacturer of the screen they use or even the operating light they use. They just need a good light and they need a good screen. And so it's sort of like it has to be part of the workplace. It's part of the studio, if you like, that these devices are there, that the image is good. But if you wanted to get a look at it, like I just say, you can see all of the equipment. I mean, there's a massive equipment. There's a massive cables. It's really, and there's a load of system checks need to be done before with the modern OR. So.
Sure.
Yeah, it's they are pretty. It is a realistic. I mean, obviously, to be honest with you, it's like anything. When you put it on TV, you have a quick tidy up. They're not always as neat and tidy as the ones you see in the drama. Maybe I shouldn't say that too much with all my NHS colleagues, but anyway, that's the reality.
Sure. How has AV's role in this space changed in the last? Is it a decade that's important? Is it 15 years? Is it 5? You mentioned we're at surgery 3.0 and we're trying to get to 4.0. what is that transition ultimately about, and how are we coming on the path?
Yeah, I mean, AV has been, I would say, a bit more than a decade, but less than 20 years, where AV has just rapidly got involved with surgery. And, I mean, one of my first customers, he was a pioneer of laparoscopic surgery, and he literally had a camera the size of a shoebox, which was an old Vidicon tube camera, black and white, with
Okay.
a massive vignetting. So the image was just a tiny circle in the middle. I mean, I honestly don't even know how he was able to operate on it. But now you've got these matchbox size CCD camera heads with either 3D or 4K, and it's amazing that miniaturization has, and we've gone through standard definition to HD to now 4K. It's just always going to be part, and an increasingly more so part of surgery. In the end, I suspect that there'll be very little surgery done without some kind of imaging device. So it's very much a
The
part
answer
of
to this
it,
question. Oh, go ahead.
and yeah. Yeah, so it's very much a part of it, and increasingly so. And of course, that then gives you the kind of the headache, which you alluded to in the earlier piece. So, what are you going to do with all this data? How are you going to manage it all? How are you going to look after it? How are you going to distribute it? How are you going to protect it from security? Aspects of it, and all those things come into it, and that's where you need to build a robust ecosystem that you maintain the integrity of the image that you're looking at, which is essential to good surgery, and also that you're able to securely manage the data.
Sure. Sure, that makes sense. The answer to this question may seem a little obvious, but I'll still ask it just to make sure I've got a grip. We talked in one of the other early news pieces about such a high-end TV, being used for the OR. You just mentioned the transition from HD to 4K, even 3D imaging. What's the purpose? What's the reason for wanting such demanding imaging specs in the OR? Why do I need such a nice TV there? Why doesn't my 20-inch HD TV work anymore?
Well, there's two immediate answers to that. Firstly, the cameras that are being used in surgery are comparable to broadcast cameras. I mean, they are top of the range, high end, high specification. High color depth, 60 frames per second, and to view that, you need to have, at its best, of course, you need to have a high quality screen. The second point is that with so many imaging modalities within the OR, so not just live cameras, but maybe there's a radiogram that you want to look at the same time. Maybe there's a overview camera or ultrasound or something like that. It's quite common to put 4 images on one screen.
Okay.
4 different images on one screen, and so consequently you need to have a high resolution and a large format screen to do that. So that's why they're quite
Sure.
popular in the OR.
Sure, that makes sense. So I've picked up on. So I watched one of your presentations that you gave here in the SDVoE Academy. All of you guys, click down below to see Colin explain some of this in more detail. But you talked about the transition that's happening in the OR away from using the matrix switch as your core for video distribution and moving towards AV over IP. What are the benefits to the surgeon, to the operating room environment of AV over IP instead of just a matrix switch?
Yeah, so of course there's lots of stakeholders involved in an efficient OR, and to be honest, if we are just talking specifically about the surgeon, then the surgeon just wants to see the best possible image that he or she can see with the minimal amount of latency. So if they're doing keyhole surgery, for example, if they move their instruments and then it takes some time to pass before they see those instruments move on the screen, that system's getting unplugged and is going to be thrown away. It's just unusable like that. So latency is a really important issue. And so they don't really care, the surgeon at the time of operating, what is bringing that signal to their eyes. It just has to be good enough. So the advantages, though, are beyond that primary use case. Really, it's what else can you do with this image? Can you send it down the hall to a seminar room? Can you send it to a lecture theatre? Can you send it over the LAN? Can you store it efficiently? Does some of that technology help with sort of more kind of electrical safety applications? Like I'm thinking, for example, if it's fiber optic based, it's naturally what we call galvanically isolated, which means that it can't possibly transfer some residual current or dangerous current to somewhere you don't want it. So there's lots of other things involved in it, but the move really is that I think that people, I think it's pretty, even if you don't know why, I pretty much guess that everybody would say, well, eventually everything will be IP. So why don't we just get on with it and move it across to IP, and then we'll figure out the benefits later as we use them and understand them. But I think that's really where it's at. I think it was the trend was set, but it was clear that the advantages will come.
Yeah, that makes sense. You also said in the talk that I referenced that you gave a couple of years ago, you said that despite everything that we just talked about, video quality being so important to capture what the camera can see and to be the surgeon's eyes, that the reason to use SDVoE in particular in the OR is not about video quality. That really stood out to me, right? Because that's one of our key advantages I see, low latency and high image quality. What do you see as the reason that SDVoE is so strong in the operating room?
So I mean, it was meant to be a sort of a bit of a thought-provoking statement, and designed to sort of pique a bit of interest. Well, why should we use SDVoE then? If it's it certainly wasn't to say that the quality is not good. The fact of the matter is that if you don't have absolutely high quality video with no compression artifacts, so lossless video transmission, which and zero latency. If you don't have those two crucial factors, which SDVoE does, then you're not even in the game. So, and since there are alternatives, well, then clearly they perform, similarly. So therefore, the reason to choose SDVoE over another is not the video quality, because that has to be there. So the advantages that I see with SDVoE, and don't get me wrong. I mean, I've done some very significant testing on SDVoE to look at, are there any artifacts of compression? What is the measured real latency? I mean, I've done my own experiments with that. Actually, I can point you in the direction of that. You can do a really good test with a mobile phone camera, actually. But you can do it yourself, and you can see that there's negligible. I mean, you just cannot perceive it. So, for all intents and purposes, it's lossless. It's zero frame latency. So the advantages are, for me, what else you can do with SDVoE, and I think this is where it sits head and shoulders above other video over IP solutions, because not only can I include USB extension, I have RS-232 control, I have infrared control. Obviously, I've got audio. I've got an independent audio. I can split the audio from the video. I can route it independently from the various encoders and decoders. I've got an incredible palette, really, of audio, video control and data protocols at my disposal to create any kind of a system within an OR. And I think that's the reason to use SDVoE. It's incredibly flexible, and there's always a solution for what you want to do. And the other great thing about it is, you have one commercially kind of available switch to do all of this, to connect all of these bits together. And you know, the cost of a 10 gig port is just, you know, you'll tell me, I mean, it's, you know, tens of dollars these days, compared to the cost of a 48 port matrix switch. So you know, that's another factor. It's really just a standard 10 gig switch. But the nice thing about SDVoE is that it kind of layers off a 1 gig network from that. So you have another network in there. So even if what you want to do within the OR has actually got nothing to do with audio and video, it's just taking some data from one point and delivering it to another, you can use the 1 gig network for that, and it's all done. So it's all done over the same switch in the same network. So I would say,
Colin,
you know, that's why.
let me pause you right there.
Yeah, sorry.
Because I've got to get to some other things, but we're going to pick this up in the after show. You stay right there, and you guys stay right there for a fact check.